Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Really good show today. Great guest. And we got a big basketball recruit. We're going to talk about it, what it means, what he brings to the program, and how excited should Badger fans be. All that and more, plus user comments, and what should Jim Leonhard change about the program if he does get the job. All that and more on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? I am Ryan Herrings, your host of Locked On Badgers. I really appreciate everybody tuning in, your team every single day. We are here for it. We're continuing to build this Badger community. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. And I teased it. We're going to have a great guest coming on, as we try to do a lot of times, and a big-time basketball commit. Justin joins the show. What's going on, my man?
I'm doing all right. I have to take in the new player to the Wisconsin Badgers, Jack Robison.
Yes.
Getting another sniper on the outside.
Yes. So Jack Robison committed today, 6'6", small forward out of Lakeville, North Minnesota, which is the fourth Lakeville North
recruiting for
very in-state recruiting. The first in the 2024 class. Lefty shooter, really good range. For those of you on the show, we released an episode earlier today that had been recorded about a month ago that has more of a Robison scouting report with Jason Jordan. But I definitely wanted to talk to Justin. Where are you at on this commit? You've seen film of him. What do you think? How is he going to fit into the program? Very excited to get your take on this.
The comparison that I kind of looked at after watching some of his film was he reminds me a lot of Douye Dukin at Wisconsin. Guy is a very good shooter from the perimeter. He's not a guy who puts the ball on the floor a ton, but he's a gritty player. He does have good athleticism. He's and I mean good by college standards. We're not talking an NBA athlete here. But he is a guy who most definitely can punish you from the outside if you let him sit. Wisconsin gets another guy who can really score it from the outside, and they're stockpiling shooters now. And there's a deep class that the guys that Wisconsin's really looking at in this class are all really, really good shooters. And you're coupling that with, Nolan Winter, who's another guy who's a great shooter. Our boy Yeldon, who's also can shoot it from the outside.
Fill it up too.
Connor, who came in this last class. And Wisconsin is really getting a very deep. There are you could kind of look at this, some hints here that you'd be looking at the type of shooting that was on those Final Four teams. And if they really hit the jackpot on this class, and I'm not even talking like a guy like Freitag, if you get, say, Con Knippel and McAndrews out of Jackson McAndrews out of Minnesota also.
Minnesota as well, Minneapolis, yep.
You have a lot of size and a lot of guys who can really shoot the ball from the outside, which allows Wisconsin to have a lot of flexibility in terms of how they run their offense. It also puts a ton of pressure on the other team when you can throw guys out there that are 6'7", 6'8", multiple guys. Number one, you can play a great two-man game because there's not a lot of teams that can double up like that and pick and pop on people. Like I would absolutely love to see Con Knippel and Jack Robison on the outside playing a two-man game, pick and pop.
Yep. And you're going to have, you would be sharing the court there with Winter, with Yeldon, Chucky Hepburn as 2 more years after this season. And we talked about this. You and I talked about this a lot last year. What were the biggest weaknesses on this team? Obviously,
it was outside shooting.
It was outside shooting. It was depth.
Yeah.
And it looks like they've certainly worked to solve that shooting portion of it, right? Like everybody they've been bringing in, it can shoot the ball. Every single person.
I don't see a lack of scoring. I think he'll be a solid defender. He's not a guy who's going to turn into an all Big Ten type defender, but he's a guy who I think that will hold up. He'll be okay against most of the wings in the Big Ten. They're the threes, and he might be able to get a little bit of time at the 4 if he fills out a little bit. But he's a guy who'll be okay at the positions that you want him to play at. Now, he doesn't have the foot speed to stick with a 2, so you're not going to play him down that low. And he's probably a little undersized to be going against the centers in the league. But he's a guy that really fits what they've been looking for. And it really does start to feel like Greg Gard really wants to move towards positionless basketball.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good fit for Wisconsin. I think we're getting to the point where we're realizing, you watch the NCAA tournament, nobody's playing with anyone back to the basket anymore. Like the teams that tried to do it, Illinois and Purdue, really didn't go anywhere in the tournament. And that the problem is if you play those teams with say 5 guys that can all move and run, a guy like Edey is going to be in trouble defensively the entire game. Like he's either going to have to close out really hard on a guy who's a much better athlete than him, or he's going to have to live with somebody just absolutely drilling wide open threes from the outside if you had a plus shooter from the outside. And they also can run the court better than him. So you'd be trading 2s for 3s most likely in a situation like that. And I think that that's a good move by Wisconsin. And I think that we seem to pick up these guys a little bit easier than finding really top end centers the last couple classes. Like Gard seems to have a better time finding 6'7", 6'8" guys who can play than guys who are 6'10". It seems like the book's kind of out now in Wisconsin. When they offer somebody who's 6'10" or bigger, other teams can come running normally. And we saw that with Rock out of South Dakota. Wisconsin got in on him super early, and then everyone started diving in on him.
Yeah, they did land Nolan Winter, which would fit kind of into that.
Yes, but he's not he's not a guy that I actually think that he'll be solid with his back to the basket, but that's not the way you want to play him. Like,
he is more of a shooter for sure. That's to your point. Yeah, I just everybody they've gone after recently, even in the transfer market, right? Klesmit can shoot the ball. Now, Kamari McGee didn't shoot it at a high percentage, but he was also on a terrible team taking a lot of tough shots. He
was the one responsible for carrying their offense.
Yeah, they've definitely gone after shooting, after skill. I'm really excited. And by the way, like kudos to Gard. There's been a long brimming frustration among Badger fans of Gard and this staff identifying people and then not being able to close. Well, they identified Robison, they closed them. It's a good, really good win for Greg Gard, and he continues to kind of stack pretty good wins at this point. Yalden, Winter, and Blackwell is a really nice complementary piece as well. Yeah, I really like what they're building out here. This could be a really fun team.
Yeah, Blackwell's a low maintenance player. He's a guy that he may have nights where he scores 6 points, but he could play really good defense, and he gets out of the way of the guys who could score. Like he doesn't have to have the ball to show up out on the court.
But he brings that defensive edge. He can shoot. I kind of want to talk about, and then we'll probably move on. But we hit on it a little bit, but it's not every recruit hits, right? Not every recruit develops in a linear path, but it is a lot of fun to look 2 or 3 years down the road potentially now, and you see a Yalden, a Winter, Robison. You'd have Chucky Hepburn potentially still on the team, a Segian. Suddenly you have 5 dudes who can shoot potentially.
And that's not even talking the 2024 class outside of Robison,
right?
Which the Badgers have some really big pieces on there. This potentially could be a very stacked team in 2024. So
let's go.
Yeah.
I hope I'm still doing the pod then.
Hopefully otherwise at least enjoying the team.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun. So that's definitely going to be exciting. We're going to continue following that. We're going to move on next to Justin has some thoughts on, potentially if Jim Leonhard gets this job, which everybody thinks it's kind of trending in that direction. I would agree with that. What are some things that we would like to see him change about the program? What are some realistic changes? What do we think is maybe unrealistic about what he could do with this program? We're going to get into that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at LinkedIn. LinkedIn remains just the number one place to post your job, to gain career traction. Because every new hire these days feels like a big risk, right? Especially for small businesses. It's tough to mess it up. It takes a lot of energy to hire somebody. It takes a lot of energy to fire somebody if it's not the right hire. That's why LinkedIn is such a valuable tool. You have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's something my company uses to find new candidates. We screen through new candidates on LinkedIn with their screening tools, powerful tools that help you sift and filter through candidates. So you're not wasting anybody's time. Candidates aren't wasting their time, and you're not wasting yours bringing in people who aren't qualified for your position, for your job. It's why small businesses continue to rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. For your second listen today, after you listen to us, go check out Locked On Sports Today. From all the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the box score, behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available wherever you get podcasts, YouTube, or the Odyssey app. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Badgers one of your first listens. We're going to jump right back into it, bring Justin back on the show. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in and listening. Justin, I want to kick it to you. This is something that you kind of brought up. What are some realistic things that you would expect to see Jim Leonhard potentially change with this program if he gets the job?
Well, I think so. Here it is. The way I look at this, and I think that a lot of Badger fans are kind of apathetic in terms of looking at the program and what the expectations, and are afraid to dream big in terms of what we could truly do. I want to make it clear that from what Wisconsin has shown so far, we have not scratched the surface of what we're capable of turning the program into from a marketing machine and presenting ourselves on a national stage. We've done a really bad job of it. And part of that is that wasn't Paul Chryst. He didn't care about all the bells and whistles and everything else. The problem is it's not about Paul Chryst. It's about an 18-year-old kid who sees the jerseys at Oregon or any place else and goes, that's awesome. And there's a reason why you can correlate to that influx. And yes, the package on the field at Oregon has gotten better, but all that pizzazz and everything else that they have going on there has led to better classes for them. They don't have, like, Oregon does not have a strong, fertile recruiting territory either, just like Wisconsin. Now they're north of California, but I think people forget how big of an area that actually is and how far away they actually are from the major population centers in California. And Wisconsin has a lot they can do from a marketing standpoint, in my opinion, to really just brush things up. We're seeing some hints of it early here. They've taken a far greater social media experience, going on. It seems like there's a lot more stuff popping up post game on the Wisconsin Badger Twitter and things like that. And that's a start to the way you want to do it. It needs to show up in recruiting too. You need to do the little things that all the other places, I know that Chryst wasn't a huge fan of sending out the graphics and everything else and whatever else. Kids love that stuff, especially if it looks cool. Like, we like that stuff. Like, I like seeing it when we see a really cool thing showing graphics for Wisconsin. I, as a fan, look at it and go, that's awesome. I really like seeing that stuff. And that's a big deal. Like, kids want to see, like, when they see somebody on there that they respect as a say NFL player or whatever, and it's a cool graphic on them, they're like, hey, that could be me someday. And they're kind of looking at it like, this is really cool that they're doing stuff like that. It's none of this stuff is going to be things that are going to sway a kid to come there, but it all adds up. Like, it's cumulative. Right. Recruiting is cumulative. And it's when we were talked about the recruiting staff being gone last year, that's a part of it. Like, it's not just that the coaches couldn't handle the recruiting aspect of it, because the base most important aspects of recruiting, they probably could. The personal touches that are associated with, people reaching out and saying, hey, how's your week going, or whatever, and stuff like that are within the program that make it feel like a family. That stuff was missing because we didn't have the people in place or the manpower to do those things. So the little things, are they a big deal? No, they're not going to sell anybody on it, but it all adds up over it when you're seeing it from somebody else that's trying to recruit you at the same time. And I think we're seeing that in the classes that have come through recently, because of the fact that you look at who we're fighting against for a lot of the recruits. It's very different than it was 2 or 3 years ago. When Saeed Khalif was here, we would have Michigan or, some of the bigger teams that we were fighting against.
Penn State, Notre Dame.
Now we're seeing Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota type teams that we're fighting with. And that's doesn't seem like a big deal, but it all matters. Like, it all is a part of it. Like, you go up a couple steps on a kid and it makes a big difference. And I think Wisconsin's done a great job of finding kids yet. I'm just saying that we have to maximize the things in the programs that we can control. It's the same thing with the offense within the program. There are people that want us to keep Bobby Ingram. I wouldn't be heartbroken if they did. I think that he's shown some signs of being a guy who can be a solid offensive coordinator. I also think that if you look at what potentially Wisconsin could be, and especially looking at the skill talent we have now, we could definitely be a more aggressive program than what we've been. And I think that would benefit us. Like, kids like seeing you putting up 40, 50 points in a week because you're aggressive. And, some of these times when we talked about this last game, like I said, we scored 35 and everyone's like, oh, we look great. And I saw some of the people on some of the message boards that we like to frequent say, oh yeah, Mertz was an A in that game. I'm like, he was good, but an A for me would have been, he puts up another touchdown or two and is absolutely carving up the other team. But we basically shut it down after the first quarter. We didn't really let them let loose anymore. And that's what I want to see. I want to see us maximize what we have. And I think that those are some things that we're hearing the words from Leonard. He's a guy who wants to evolve and adapt. So I think we will be more aggressive offensively moving forward. I think that the program in general, from a marketing standpoint, he understands we've got to get our name out there and make it as big as possible. You've got to, you want to blast as much out there as you possibly can, because you're fighting with the other top 15 teams. That's who Wisconsin needs to be fighting against.
Well, listen, Jim Leonhard is 20 years younger than Paul Chryst. I mean, I'm just doing some rough math here. I don't know the exact.
He's 39. Chryst was
58, 57, something like that. Right. So some of this isn't Paul Chryst's fault in a way, right? He's from a different era, and Jim Leonhard is also from a different era. So I agree with you. I think Jim Leonhard can come in and I think it wasn't Torchio. One of the defensive backs was talking about his energy, right? His energy is infectious. It's contagious, talking about Jim Leonhard. And this program needs some of that. It just does. And I want to add swagger. I want to add another bullet point to what you were saying about marketing. The spring game. It matters. It matters because we see recruits talk about it on social media. That's how you know it matters.
And even just showing stuff. You look at how big of a deal it is. Yeah, Big Ten Network. Yeah, it's whatever. But it's fun to go there and watch that. And it gives recruits a chance to see some things like your offense and stuff like that, and some of the young guys who are out there on the field doing some things. So
listen, the spring game at Wisconsin doesn't get 60, 70,000 like Nebraska and Ohio State.
It doesn't at majority of the schools out there.
But my microphone just fell out. I'm back. Sorry. I missed what you said. I apologize. My headphones fell out.
It doesn't. There's maybe 10 schools in the country that pull that type of base.
Right, but what I was going to say is I don't think it matters because it still gets 10 to 20,000. That's a lot of people to come support your program, right? Don't crap on that because you're not getting 70,000. You get 10, 20,000 people out. That's a lot of goodwill you can build. The kids come down on the field. You can sign autographs.
They get to meet players.
They get to meet players. You get to see some of a game. That's a great thing. I always feel like Badger fans take the wrong look at that when they say, we only get 20,000. That's a lot of people that you have an impression upon, that you can build community with, like you said. That matters. And to shut that down, I thought was always a mistake. And it just goes back to the PR, the marketing thing that you're kind of hitting on. We just started to feel a little stale.
Well, the other part of it is from just a press standpoint, Chryst was anti-press, wanted nothing. He didn't want to talk to them about anything going on within the program or anything like that. Just was out there. The problem with that is when you don't say anything, you're allowing everyone else to shape, the way that you're viewed. You're not the one presenting yourself out there. You're effectively letting everyone else to decide their own opinions. And that's fine if you don't care. But the problem is that we saw that with Chryst, how that can damage a program. The fans getting frustrated with the fact that you effectively weren't giving them anything. And I can't speak for anyone else. I'll speak for myself when it comes to it. And I felt like he was he just didn't care about fans. My job is to coach football. You want to watch it, so be it. But my job is to win, and I want to coach. Fans are a necessary evil to this, is kind of what it felt like. There was nothing that was really done within the program to make it a better experience for the fans. It was just kind of pulling teeth to kind of do anything for them. Like Mendota Gridiron Club. Did another thing that got shut down because Paul Chryst didn't want to do speeches and stuff like that to the boosters. Well, boosters are important. Boosters
Even
are
more
why,
so now.
Yeah, boosters are why you look at Northwestern getting state-of-the-art facilities and a brand new stadium.
Yeah,
because they're putting money into a program that, quite honestly, quite frankly, doesn't deserve it. But hey, they're willing to do it. Well, a lot of the stuff that we're looking at Wisconsin could have been done already, like this new facility and stuff like that. Could have been done a decade ago.
Which we should point out was approved and done under Paul Chryst's tenure. Should have already happened, but we should give credit where credit's due.
And I'm not blaming that on him. I'm just saying that from that standpoint.
Well, I think he bears a responsibility there, though. To your point, like glad handing boosters and kind of being available to them, and I don't want to say sucking up, but just you have to be the face of the franchise, being friendly, and it's so important in college sports, and it's more important now than ever. And quite frankly, as NIL continues to evolve and as the need for NIL continues to evolve, making the move to somebody who is going to be more friendly in those areas is probably all the more important. Like this wasn't going to get better under Paul Chryst with NIL continuing to become more and more important.
Which is also another area that Wisconsin really has to up its game. Like now we've had a year effectively to take a look at this. You got to get serious about NIL. And I realize that it's an outside varsity collective has been created. They've started some things. They were just at this last game. They threw a pregame party.
Yep.
These are things that Wisconsin really needs to start pushing. That we need to figure out the best ways to maximize this. And they need to figure it out in the landscape of the top teams. If everyone else is going to play Wild Wild West with this, you need to understand you're just hurting yourself by not getting involved.
Yeah. And by the way, for those who may not understand the scope of this, who are maybe not as familiar with NIL, what's happening, I was talking to a person, certainly no names, but involved in a high-level SEC NIL department. He was part of the startup of that department. And his school has a player who was approached. Again, this guy is on the team. Another SEC school approached him and said, we have a lot of money waiting for you per month. Again, I'm going to be intentionally vague here if you enter the transfer portal and leave. And this player was basically like, I almost have to go because that money's there. So like it's wild, wild west right now. I think some of it's going to calm down, but Wisconsin has to up the NIL game. Coming up next, we got to take a quick break. We're going to get into user comments. We got a bunch of good user comments from the community. I want to get to them, including, did Paul Chryst kind of ruin Graham Mertz's career? We're going to have some good comments to talk about and discuss coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends at Sweatblock. This is a real customer review. Pamela would hide in her bathroom every 30 minutes to dry off her armpits so nobody would see the wet circles under her arms. She finally has her life back because of Sweatblock. Pamela was able to fix her problem because of Sweatblock, which was designed by a doctor who had his own issues with perspiration. Sweatblock gives you the confidence to wear what you want without embarrassing underarm sweat or odors. The Sweatblock wipes were featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show with firefighters. And if it can pass that test, let's face it, none of us are working that hard in our day-to-day jobs. I'm certainly not. If you or someone else you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try Sweatblock. Save 20% with promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. I want to thank everybody again tuning in to Locked On Badgers, making this your first listen every day. One of your first listens every day, your team every day. Really, really do appreciate all of y'all so much. If you like the show, hit subscribe. But we're here to continue giving you the content. So we try not to ask for subscribes or any of that stuff too much because we figure if we put out good stuff, it'll eventually happen. And that's really what we're about. So bring Justin back on the show. Really do appreciate it. Let's do some user comments.
That is my new favorite ad read for you.
Sweatblock. It's good stuff. Friend of the show. Listen, I'll send you some.
Yeah.
If you need.
You never sent me the Built Bar. All right, let's start with
Built Bar's great. It doesn't get to you because I eat them.
Yes.
Look at that, friend of the show. Look at me go. Let's start here. Let's go to a couple again comments from the users off YouTube, Twitter, and off the Discord. I want to start here with. Oh, I just had it. I know I feel terrible about it. Let's see. Okay, I don't know where the comment went, but I'm just going to ask you, Justin, because I lost the comment. There was a user on YouTube who asked, did Paul Chryst ruin Graham Mertz's career? Was all of his struggles really more about the offense around him?
There's some hyperbole there, but I will flat out say it. Quite frankly, the first few years of his career, yes, he definitely did. It was not a QB friendly system at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the play sequencing was another huge problem that was involved with it. You're putting a guy in the worst possible situation to excel. You're putting him into third and long situations consistently. You're not giving him a chance to build any confidence with anything. Like, we saw how different the last few games passing have looked. And quite frankly, if we wanted to, we could pass a lot more in these games. And I was actually kind of upset we didn't against Michigan State, because I felt like it was there and we overthought that one. But Mertz could have been better than what he was. There's without a doubt in my mind. Now, I don't know what we would have saw that first year.
Yeah, I would say, and we got to get through a couple questions kind of quickly, but I would agree with you. But I would also say we have a better receiver group this year, which is helping Mertz that he hasn't had, and he came into this season in a little better shape. Like he said, he lost 10 pounds in the offseason. But I would still say, if you're going to bring in a 4-star quarterback and you give him a different offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach every single year, you are absolutely not setting him up for success. So I think there's validity to this. Like, Paul Chryst and just the coaching turnover and the play calling did Graham Mertz no favors.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get to the next one. We got, like I said, several we want to get through. Justin, we did a award show. This is from JPVN 2015. And offensive MVP should be Braylon Allen. Offensive line doing him no favor. Second would be DK. Third would be Mertz. How would you rank your top 3 offensive MVPs for this year?
I would probably reverse that.
Okay.
I think that, listen, I love Allen. A lot of his yardage was, garbage yardage for the better part of it. We've leaned on the passing game. It is what it is so far. The passing game is why Wisconsin has 4 wins. If we would have stayed, if we weren't passing as well as we were, I put it to you this way. Let me phrase it to you this way.
Mm-hmm.
Which is more likely to win us a football game? Leaning heavily on Graham Mertz to pass us to a win, or leaning heavily on Braylon Allen to run us to a win? Because so far this year, we have not run the ball well enough to lean heavily on the run game and win.
I would say against a good team, you need both. I don't think this team is good enough. I don't think this team's good enough to do either exclusively and beat a good team. And JP, thank you for the comment. Just for the record, JP, I agreed with you. I have Braylon Allen number 1. Justin's bringing the smoke today. Let's keep going. So Justin reversed that order. We had a couple comments that are like this. And by the way, for everyone, I've said this before for comments, I have a character limit. So if your comments are shorter, it's because I've had to crop some of it out to fit it in. Family Wortman. And I had a couple comments like this, so I want to throw one of them up here. Basically, there's several comments along the lines of we underestimated the youth on the offensive line this year. Next year is really the year for the offensive line to break through with Bob Boston in his second year and the young players. Thoughts on that?
I don't think that it's a youth thing situation. I do think that it's a coaching thing. I think there were a lot of changes and a lot of upheaval. And I do think that that's taking a year to kind of get everyone comfortable with it. It's like we talked about Graham Mertz being shifted around for that. That's the same thing for offensive linemen, switching an offensive line coach. Mm-hmm. You can, by the end of the season, I think we'll be headed in the direction we want to be. But I think it was one of those situations where it's probably taken the entire season for us to fully get a feel for it.
I think that's fair. Let's go here from Joel Berman. Are we more optimistic about the remaining games? If Leonard wins the next 2 games and they become bowl eligible, will they drop the interim title before the end of the year?
I think potentially they could. I think it really depends on how they look the remainder of these games. They have, last I saw, the rec is actually out there for the head coach position. If that's the case, if Mac wants to interview people, they can effectively shut it down whenever they want. I mean, they have to interview probably 2 or 3 candidates. Mm-hmm. As soon as that's done, you're effectively done. Now, I'm very interested to see where they go with this, because with a lot of these other coaches, you look at a guy like Leipold, he's going to bring in his entire staff from Kansas. Mm-hmm. We have no clue what we're looking at with Leonard. So if we look at the remainder of the season, it's really hard to compare this year to whatever next year could be. Like if he brings in a completely new offensive staff, we could be better this year technically than what we potentially could be next year, just due to the growing pains of having a new system, a new coach, and everything. I don't know how you feel about this. I think whatever he's going to do, whether it's keep Ingram or whoever, it has to be because of that's what he wants to run.
Mm-hmm.
We can't go halfway with it.
I agree.
We can't do a Band-Aid fix. It's got to be, if you're going to do it and get it over with, but don't do this halfway and then have to blow things up in 2 or 3 years again because you're not happy with what's being run.
I think, listen, if there's one thing we learned about new athletic director Chris McIntosh, it's that he is a bold fellow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we win the next 2 games, I could absolutely see the interim tag dropping, right? Because the sooner you know for sure, because listen, if he wins next,
it hurts
games,
recruiting.
It hurts recruiting, which I don't think is the biggest deal, but it matters, right? And if you know he's going to get the job, then what's the point of waiting?
Here's the deal. If you look at it this way, and I think there's potentially something with like QB recruiting. I could very well see that they have somebody they want to offer, and maybe they're hinting at them like, hey, you're my guy. I'm not going to offer you until we know I have the job because it's pointless. And they could very well have an offer out there that's not actually public, because what does it matter if he gets an offer from a lame duck coach and he ends up getting replaced? Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but what good does it matter to make it? What good does it do you if you make an offer if Leonard makes a QB offer and then we replace him and the next coach is like, this isn't the guy I wanted. Now you have a player who committed to you who is unwanted.
And let me know what you think, yes or no, on this. If we get to a bowl game this year, Jim Leonhard gets the job, yes or no?
Oh, I think for sure.
So that's my point. If you win the next 2 games, you become bowl eligible. What would be the point of waiting? So I think at that point you do drop it. And we got Dice Gaming and Sports, who's done a bunch of comments on the show, says Jim Leonhard is the guy. Let's finish up. We got 2 more ones. We're going to finish up there. If I didn't get to your comments, I apologize. I try to get to as many of them as we can when we do this show. As far as last week, so this is a show from a couple weeks ago, but this guy, Gold Digger 65, is talking about the Michigan State loss, saying we're too young to have proper perspective. Michigan State's a difficult place to play. He saw Barry Alvarez go there with a good team and get dominated by an average Michigan State team. He went on to say, because again, I had to crop this comment. He said, you can't take too much from that loss, that we overreacted a little bit. And we might have.
We saw Wisconsin play a top 10 Michigan State team at Michigan State with Hornibrook as a quarterback and win 30-6. It's not that tough of a place to play.
The Leo Musso return where he threw the spin move. Yeah.
It can be in a night game. I will agree. I've seen some pretty good looking games with them against Michigan and stuff like that. I think saying that a 2 and 4 at the time team, that we were going into a crazy atmosphere. Come on.
It was homecoming. It was a 3:00 game. Tucker has energy. I do think there's a point here that maybe less Michigan State, but more going on the road in the Big Ten can always be a little tricky. There's no layups.
If your team is not locked in, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Wisconsin has been kind of a team that has struggled to kind of be there mentally this year.
Yeah. Last comment here. This is from David P. Completely disagree about not needing a quarterback coach. He helps develop footwork, dropbacks, arm motion, fundamentals. Nobody has direct quarterback experience or coaching quarterbacks directly on this roster. So this was a comment I had to crop. Again, David had more here. This came from a discussion I think Rajiv and I were having about Bobby Ingram and how Bobby Ingram has gotten the best out of Mertz, and maybe we don't need a dedicated quarterbacks coach. It's an interesting discussion. I definitely think we haven't done enough in the quarterback coaching room. But if Mertz is progressing under Ingram, I don't know. It's interesting. What are your thoughts on this one?
I personally, with all due respect on this, the fundamentals, you could have a grad assistant doing that stuff. Like you could have somebody that's seen enough of it to know what the drill work should look like.
We have Keller Chryst right now, which is going to be an awkward one.
Where I look at it is I want my offensive coordinator or QB coach to have this, to be seeing the field the same way as what my quarterback is. And that's why I said when we discussed it in the live post game that I feel like you have to have somebody who is looking at things the same way. Getting an extra voice in there, somebody outside of your offensive coordinator, I think is a bad thing, because now you have too many voices in the room, and you want You want that communication to be just between him, like those two to be on the same wavelength. Getting another voice in there kind of makes it a little bit more complicated.
So maybe perfect world is your offensive coordinator is a former quarterback's coach or a former quarterback, but
that's what he handles. Yeah.
But obviously that doesn't always work out, So yeah, I hear you there. I think that it makes a lot of sense. You want to streamline the communication as possible from the offensive coordinator to the head or to the quarterback. I would agree that if Mertz hadn't shown progress, that we need to get somebody in there to coach quarterbacks. But Mertz looks as good as he ever has. So there's a bit of me that's kind of like, it's working. David, definitely appreciate the comment. But if the results are there, then
and I think we need to see it. Like we're going to see, it's going to be very interesting to see what the offense looks like after this bye week, because we're going to see more wrinkles thrown in there, and we'll see a better idea of what they want this really truly to look like going forward.
Agreed. All right, man. I appreciate it as always. For all the comments, I appreciate y'all so much. We try to get to as many of them as we can. We're going to keep pumping out content bye week, but we're not for us. We got content every day coming to you on Wisconsin, and appreciate everything. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Sports Today. Biggest stories of the day, instant reaction, game recaps, take of the day, wherever you get podcasts, on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. On Wisconsin, we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Justin.